No animals were harmed during the making of this lore video. In a hole in the ground, there lived a mystery. Who or what is responsible for the carnage inside of Goodsprings Cave? The town of Goodsprings is situated in a valley between two mountain ranges. This valley is known as the Goodsprings Basin. The mountain range to the west is known as the Spring Mountains, which we won't be covering in this video, and the mountains to the east are known as the Bird Springs Range, which is where the topic of our video lies. These respective mountain ranges are not named in the game, but the game's map is based on satellite topography of the area. So it is a fairly correct representation of reality, albeit vastly scaled down. If you listen to the radio while playing New Vegas, you might hear a song titled "In the Shadow of the Valley." I like to think that this song refers to the town of Goodsprings and the fact that it is nestled in the valley of these two mountain ranges. Around the Bird Springs mountain range, you will encounter coyotes. I'm sure in real life the fauna is much more diverse than what you see in the game. As for flora, you will see the usual scrub grass as well as some Joshua trees, also known as yucca. Contrary to what you might expect, the Joshua trees are not in any way related to Joshua Graham, though they were named by Mormons, and Joshua Graham is a Mormon. The Joshua trees are a species of yucca, but they are not the same as the banana yucca plant, which you can find throughout the Mojave wasteland, and from which you can harvest banana yucca fruit. The Joshua trees are related to the banana yucca, but you can't harvest anything from them in the game, although in real life you could. The Joshua trees bear edible fruit and seeds, but don't take my word for it. Here, to explain this further, is special guest Combat Wombat.
About 13,000 years ago, giant sloths like me roamed the Mojave and used our colossal size to reach up into the Joshua trees and grab the tasty fruit. Giant sloth dung has been found to contain the seeds of the Joshua tree, and it is believed that us giants played an important role in dispersing the seeds throughout the Mojave. We giant sloths are now extinct, and now the fruit likely falls to the ground where it ripened and does not get dispersed as properly as it should. But there are some colossal newcomers to the Mojave wasteland, such as the Deathclaws. These Deathclaws are known to be carnivorous and not the gentle herbivores that we giant sloths were. Deathclaws are vicious killers, genetically engineered from Jackson chameleons which have a purely carnivorous diet, but they are large enough that they could fill the niche that we once occupied. Like us, the Deathclaws could reach up high into the Joshua trees with their huge hands and pluck the tasty fruit. If only the Deathclaws could learn to become vegetarians, then the Mojave wasteland might become a much happier place.
Thank you, Combat Wombat. Bethesda actually introduced Mega Sloths into Fallout 76, but so far they seem to be confined to the East Coast. Who can say if these mutated Mega Sloths might one day expand their territory to the Mojave? If so, they have a source of food already waiting for them in the form of these Joshua trees. I would also like to point out that Joshua trees have been used by Native Americans as a valuable resource, not just for food, but also for material to weave baskets and sandals. Unfortunately, the in-game Joshua trees serve no functional purpose in New Vegas. There is no products which can be harvested from them and used for crafting. Maybe this is something that the modding community could address? Obsidian might have intended for the Joshua trees to provide harvestable products for crafting, but due to the severe time constraints imposed on them by Bethesda, this may have been cut out like so many other things in the game. But modders could address this. Can we have craftable sandals and baskets made from Joshua trees added to the game as a mod? That would be pretty awesome, in my opinion. It would allow for more tribal sort of gameplay. The other sorts of flora to be found in the area of Goodsprings mountain range are the mundane scrub grasses, which one would expect bighorners and Brahmin to graze on. There's just not much to say when it comes to grass. This pineapple-looking plant here appears to be another species of yucca. I've looked up a variety of species of yucca, and several look similar to this, so I'm not sure specifically which one it is, but it is definitely in the yucca genus. I'm not sure what else to say about it. So, there are at least 3 yucca species in New Vegas, and 2 of them can be found here within the vicinity of Goodsprings Range. However, Brock flowers are another story. There are a total of 7 harvestable Brock flowers on and around Goodsprings Range. There are 5 on the range itself, and an additional 2 to the east of the range, south of the nearby Devil's Gullet. Not a bad source for Brock flowers if you happen to be searching for some for crafting purposes, or to complete Sunny Smiles' campfire tutorial.
For the trouble. One more thing I wanted to show you. Thought I might teach you about living off the land and making useful things for yourself. Interested? Alright then. We'll need a couple ingredients to get started. Gonna want some xander root and a Brock flower. Let me think now. I know I've seen Brock flowers growing up at the graveyard, and I seem to remember there being xander root over by the schoolhouse. Bring those on back to me, and we'll get cooking. Let me see what you got. Yeah, these'll do just fine. Just fine. Alright now. We're gonna be making something folks on the trail call healing powder. Go on over to that campfire now. Give it a try.
Given the importance of Brock flowers as a harvestable crafting ingredient, it may be something I'll cover in the future in its own dedicated lore video. But even if I don't, I'm sure I'll be covering them a lot more when I get around to covering the aptly named Brock Flower Cave, where the aforementioned flowers grow in their greatest abundance. So for now, I'll refrain from saying too much on the subject, as it's not really the topic of this video. Aside from the Brock flowers, though, there's not much else of note when you reach the summit of Goodsprings mountain range. Unlike many mountains in New Vegas, this one actually can be climbed. There are no invisible walls preventing you from getting up here, and when you do, you are rewarded with a spectacular vantage point to view the surrounding world in all directions, or at least as far as draw distances will allow. From up here, you can see the remains of Ringo's caravan, where it was ambushed by powder gangers as he was making his way back to New Vegas. There are dead pack Brahmins, as well as the corpses of 2 caravan guards, a male and a female. The female corpse has been stripped of her clothing, implying that the powder gangers did something more than just kill her. We can see one of the powder gangers still patrolling the area. Bear with me, folks. It's hard to be precise with the analog stick when you're a dog and lack opposable thumbs. Also, my gun skill is only 19, and I haven't yet received gun training from Sunny Smiles yet. Stop right there, powderganger scum. Nobody gets away with rape and murder on my watch. After killing the powderganger, I hop down to loot the corpse and investigate the scene of the crime. Two more powdergangers show up and foolishly turn their backs to me.
Never gets old when something blows up. Damn, running low on smokes again. Any lawman that comes after me won't have it easy.
Both kills are done in stealth, so their faction is none the wiser. No reputation has been lost from this, but instead I have gained karma because this deed was witnessed by the gods, and they have approved of it. Ringo's ambushed caravan is not really the topic of this video, and I may cover this in more depth in the future, so for now, I just loot the area and move on. I go back and climb Bird Peak Range yet again. The long-range sniping I did with my starting 9mm pistol gives me the urge to attempt a 360 trick shot while jumping off the top of the mountain. Don't try this at home, folks. I'm a professional. Well, maybe not. But, as I plummeted to my death, a new location was discovered on my Pip-Boy. Let's try to approach the cave from a more conventional direction. The entrance of the cave is guarded by two adult coyotes, as well as a pup. The coyotes growl as a warning to back off, and if one heeds the warning, then the coyotes do not attack. This behavior is also true of the wild bighorners you see in the game. Respect their boundaries, and they will leave you alone. Get too close, though, and they will attack. The growling is a warning to stay away. If these coyotes were the vicious manhunters that some might assume, then there would be no warning, and they would just simply attack on sight. But this is not the case. One could simply murder the coyotes and their pup in cold blood and enter the cave. But there are a few non-lethal alternatives. One method is to use stealth and sneak inside. There are two guaranteed stealth boy spawns in the town of Goodsprings. One inside the safe of the schoolhouse, which even Easy Pete could not crack open with dynamite. The other one is in the inventory of Joe Cobb. Sometimes, on rare occasions, a stealth boy might randomly spawn inside of a container, but this is quite rare. However, the schoolhouse safe and Joe Cobb are guaranteed sources for a stealth boy. Joe Cobb spawns in after you complete Sonny's tutorial and you head back into the Pioneer Saloon to say hi to Trudy.
I'm done being nice. If you don't hand Ringo over soon, I'm going to get my friends and we're burning this town to the ground. Got it?
We'll keep that in mind. Now, if you're not gonna buy something, get out.
What the hell is your problem? What do you want?
To take his stealth boy, you can pickpocket him, which is rather absurd, considering that to get away with doing so would likely require you to use a stealth boy in the first place, or you can do something like this.
I'm done being nice. If you don't hand Ringo over soon, I'm going to get my friends and we're burning this town to dead. Come on. Whoa.
I'm not taking sides.
Whoa.
I hope you didn't just bring a heap of trouble down on Goodsprings by killing Joe Cobb like that.
You know what, Trudy? You're right. Killing Joe Cobb like that went very poorly. I almost ended up dying there. Let me see if I can't kill him more efficiently.
I'm not taking sides.
Come on. Whoa. Come on.
I'm not taking...
Still not great, but better.
Watch out.
We need more people like you around.
This guy gets it. Now, with the stealth boy in hand, we can make our way past the Coyotes towards the entrance of the cave. It may have cost me a stealth boy, but it could have been worse. At least it didn't cost me an arm and a leg like it did to this poor sap. So there is clearly a partial human skeleton outside the entrance of the cave. This is an ominous sign of what we may find waiting for us on the inside. And sure enough, there is a skeleton waiting for us just inside the entrance. The skeleton is clutching a bottle of cat eye, but more on that later. The bones are somewhat disarticulated, but it seems that there is a complete skeleton from what we see here. So the arm and the leg we spotted outside are probably from a different individual. The bones are completely free of soft tissue and they've turned black. These bones have been here for a long time, possibly as far back as the Great War 200 years earlier. Perhaps those who weren't qualified to live inside of a vault sought refuge here in these caves, nature's own natural vault. Though that is just a theory, and truth be told, they could be much more recent than that. But either way, they have been dead for quite some time. The Mojave is a desert, and these bones are inside of a cave, so they should remain well preserved here for centuries, but they're likely not older than the Great War, but you never know. Near the skeleton, we see some fresh blood on the sand. It could not possibly have anything to do with the skeleton we see at the entrance. Is it human blood or the blood of an animal? We have to move quickly because the clock is ticking on that stealth boy. Oh, dear God, there is blood and gore all over the place. There are some old skeletons which are definitely human, but the gore and blood could be from anything. And here we find the fresh corpse of a female ghoul wearing a robe. She is one of the Bright followers, which we will probably cover in a future lore video. On her corpse, we find a plasma pistol. I'm not an energy-focused character, so I'll probably sell this off at Chet's store. The sort of weapon you find on the dead Bright followers is random, but it is always an energy weapon of some kind. I'd say that makes it worthwhile to venture to Goodsprings Cave to grab an energy weapon early on in the game. You can either use it or sell it for the caps, but either way, it makes it worth going out of the way to get. But that's not all we find here. A little bit further away, we find the fresh corpses of a male and female wastelander. Again, the loot you find on them is random, but they will always have a weapon of some kind, as well as some other miscellaneous items. There is also a duffel bag near the body of the female wastelander containing some more random loot. Nothing rare or unique, but all told, it certainly adds up to a decent amount of caps early on in the game. Now, the stealth boy is one way to explore the cave without murdering the coyotes. If you do kill the coyotes, you can get coyote meat and hides. Killing animals in video games is something I hate doing, and I'm not going to do it just for the sake of a lore video. So I'm only going to show the non-violent methods. The other non-violent way of exploring the cave is by making it to level 10 and grabbing the first rank of the Animal Friend perk. This will make the coyotes be non-hostile. In addition to level 10, it also requires a charisma of 6 and a survival skill of 45 to grab the perk. This is not really a good option for exploring Goodsprings Cave because by the time someone makes it to level 10, they probably already made their way to New Vegas by then. So it's not something someone would normally have when exploring Goodsprings Cave. So I decided to cheat and add in the perk through a console command. First thing I did was made a new character, and then I opened the console and I typed in this command. Unlike the Stealth Boy, this perk has no time limit, so I can explore the cave at my leisure. And neither do I have to kill the coyotes, nor fear being attacked by them. Is it cheating to use a console command to add in a perk I didn't earn? Sure, probably, but I'm only doing this for demonstration purposes. Now, before entering the cave, let us check out this secret hollowed-out rock here. There will be a random item here, which in this case is a scrap electronics. Nothing really worth writing home about, but it is there and it is a thing. Again, we enter the cave and come to the skeleton clutching a bottle of pills. Now, I don't know about you, but when I see a skeleton clutching a bottle of pills, it gives me a sudden urge to want to swallow those pills. These pills are called cat eye. The implications aren't looking good when you find these pills in the hands of skeletons. Are these pills even approved by the FDA? If they are a post-war chem, then probably not. All regulation and oversight disappeared when the bombs fell. But then again, this is a timeline where we have radioactive sodas, so I guess this would be par for the course. Cat Eye only appears in New Vegas and not in any other Fallout game. I can see the logic in it. It really does sound like a good idea on paper, but in practice it just removes color and just doesn't really seem to help a player in any meaningful way. If you've ever played New Vegas, you've probably used Cat Eye once or twice and never bothered with it again, because it really isn't very helpful, at least in my opinion, anyway. I think at this point it might be worth mentioning that the game's director, Josh Sawyer, is colorblind. So my theory is, the fact that Cat Eye removes color from a player's vision wasn't something he viewed as a big deal, because he doesn't see the full range of colors anyway. But that's just my theory, and I could be wrong, and even though Tim Kaine did not work on New Vegas, I read that he is also colorblind. I just thought I would mention it. There are a few other items and perks in the game which have effects similar to Cat Eye, and again, it kinda sounds good on paper, but in practice it really isn't that great. Maybe for someone who is colorblind, the advantages manage to outweigh the downsides? I don't know. But Cat Eye isn't something that I personally ever use in my games, but since it's here, I had to cover it. Some might be quick to judge the Coyotes for the human remains inside of the cave, but these people might just as well have died from ingesting the snake oil Cat Eye pills. What might have happened was some people were about to explore the caves when a traveling snake oil con man passed by on the road and sold them some Cat Eye pills, telling them it would help them see in the darkness of the cave. And as the con artist laughed to himself with a bag of caps in hand, the people swallowed the pills that the swindler sold them, and then they died. So maybe it wasn't the Coyotes' fault. Maybe it was the work of a con artist who sold them some fraudulent pills that not only did not work, but brought about their deaths. If anyone in the modding community happens to be watching this video, could one of you perhaps make a mod of a traveling pill and tonic salesman that goes around the map with his cart full of snake oil products pulled by some pack Brahmin? I would love to see that con artist get turned into a glowing goo pile by the Van Graffs, or just slaughtered by powder gangers, vipers, jackals, or whatever. Or perhaps even the Legion. You know, the Legionnaires will often say so-and-so is a degenerate and belongs on a cross, but a snake oil marketer in a pretentious douchebag hat really is a degenerate and really does belong on a cross. I would love to see this guy get nailed to one, so come on modders, please make it so. So the Cat Eye pills are one possible explanation for the corpses inside the cave. I know that most will just assume the Coyotes did it and blame them simply because they are there, but from what I know about Coyotes and their behavior, this seems extremely unlikely that they could be to blame for this. According to Wikipedia, coyote attacks on humans are very uncommon, and fatalities are even more rare. Exactly how rare? Well, in all of recorded history, there have been only 2 confirmed fatalities. 2 fatal coyote attacks have been confirmed by experts. On August 26, 1981, an urban coyote grabbed a 3-year-old girl named Kelly Keene in the driveway of her mother and father's home in Glendale, California, and dragged her across the street. Her father rescued her by chasing the animal away and rushed her to Glendale Adventist Medical Center, but she died in surgery due to blood loss and a broken neck because of the incident. On October 27, 2009, 2 eastern coyotes mauled a 19-year-old singer-songwriter named Taylor Mitchell at Cape Breton Highlands National Park in Nova Scotia. She was on a break from her concert tour when they stalked and chased her down on the Skyline Trail. An air ambulance airlifted Taylor to Queen Elizabeth II Health Sciences Center, but she died after midnight from severe injuries and blood loss that were sustained during the assault. Of these 2 Coyote attack fatalities, only one was an adult, Taylor Mitchell. And yet, in the cave, we find several skeletons and 3 fresh corpses, and all appear to be adults. So we are expected to believe that in this one cave, Coyotes managed to kill a bunch of full-grown adult humans who were armed with weapons in this cave alone, but yet in all of recorded history outside of this cave, there was only a single adult fatality. That seems like an unlikely story to me. And I know what you might be thinking. This is a post-apocalyptic Fallout game, and the Coyotes have mutated, right? Well, that does not seem to be the case. They don't have 2 heads or extra limbs, and they don't glow in the dark or anything like that. They're just coyotes. Many species have been radically altered by the apocalypse, but not these critters. The good citizens of the nearby town of Goodsprings will say that the town's economy mainly revolves around the trading of meat and hides.
Mostly traders looking to buy bighorn or meat and hides. The traders are the main reason the general store manages to stay in business. Most travelers heading south on the I-15 just push on towards Prim, unless they're in desperate need of supplies.
Goodsprings seems to be the place to live if you like to eat raw steak for breakfast, but I wouldn't recommend it. Unless you're a dog like me, you might want to stick to eating corn, or, as the locals call it, maize, which, by the way, is also grown in the town. You can see how the people in the town make a living, which is more than can be said of towns in Fallout 3, such as Megaton, where everything just works.
It just works. All of this just works. All of this just works.
Easy Pete also mentions looking after Brahmins as well as bighorners.
Was a prospector until I decided to settle here to get away from the NCR. Now we'll just take it easy and help out with the Brahmin and bighorners.
Though the Brahmins are nowhere to be seen. Perhaps they were all killed or sold recently, or maybe it was just an oversight by the developers. But either way, both Brahmin and bighorners are grazing livestock animals and easy prey to the surrounding wildlife, such as the geckos and the coyotes. This is where Sunny Smiles comes in. Sunny is essentially the Goodsprings equivalent of Jericho in Megaton. She wears leather, which probably comes from the geckos she hunts, or the Brahmins and bighorners that Easy Pete raises, and she seems to be the guardian of the town, protecting it from encroaching wildlife and powder gangers alike. However, unlike Jericho, she is not a psychopath, and she will not abandon her duty of defending the town to go gallivanting on an adventure across the wasteland, much to the chagrin of many players. I plan to cover Sunny Smiles in her own dedicated lore video one day, but for now, let's hear what she has to say in her own words about her role in the town.
I hunt geckos mostly. The meat's pretty good and I can always find a buyer for the hides. I also help keep the town clear of rat scorpions and coyotes. Not many people live in Goodsprings, so wildlife is always creeping in.
As in real life, coyotes are a major threat to livestock, but attacks on humans are rare, and fatal attacks even rarer. Sunny even says in her own words that the coyotes aren't much to worry about, except in large packs.
Around here, mostly coyotes and geckos. The coyotes are pretty dangerous in large packs, but otherwise they're nothing to really worry about.
Sunny is the only person in Goodsprings who has anything to say about the coyotes at all, and even she says they're nothing to worry about. No one else seems terribly concerned about them enough to even mention them. Furthermore, no one in Goodsprings mentions anyone in the town missing or being killed or attacked by coyotes. The bodies we find in the cave are described as wastelanders by the game, and not Goodsprings settlers as they would be if they were people who lived in Goodsprings. All of this evidence suggests that the coyotes could not have been the culprit. The dead wastelanders and the Bright follower must have come from somewhere else. Why they turned up dead inside of this cave is a mystery, but one that I feel cannot be blamed on the coyotes. It is well known in Fallout canon that ghouls and humans have had a mutual animosity with one another. This was established from the very first game in the franchise.
There'd better be a killer reason for standing in my shadow. Does next on the menu ring a bell for you, Normie? What is that? Sucking up? Listen, Walker, I don't do the deal with norms, so blowing smoke up the tail ain't gonna get you head seat at the table.
And New Vegas is no exception.
We wish to escape the barbarity of the wasteland, especially the violence and bigotry of its human inhabitants.
The fact we find a dead ghoul and several dead humans in this cave could be the result of both groups coming into contact with one another, and due to their mutual hostility, a fight ensued, and this turned out to be the result. That is one possibility. The gore and giblets we see strewn about in the cave pool suggests there may have been other corpses that got completely obliterated into giblets and are no longer recognizable as distinct bodies. Coyotes would not have caused this, because coyotes might eat a corpse, but they won't gibbet and scatter it about like we see here. The sort of weaponry which would do something like this would be explosives. Now, who do we know that resides in this area that uses explosives and could be responsible for this carnage? That's right, the Powder Gangers.
You eyeballing me?
They are a gang of escaped prison inmates who have seized a large stockpile of explosives and now wreak havoc on the surrounding area.
Problem is, it turns out that giving convicts a bunch of dynamite and blasting powder isn't the best idea.
We've seen what they've done to Ringo's caravan. Ringo tells us how he fled from the ambush to Goodsprings.
My caravan was on the return trip from California and heading back to the company branch in New Vegas when we got jumped. Not even a drop your weapons and hands up before the bullets started flying. We put up a good fight, but there was too many of them. I took a few of the bandits down before I ran, so I figure their friends are out for revenge.
Is it possible that other members of his ill-fated caravan sought refuge inside of the cave and then were dynamited inside by the Powder Gangers? This might explain the gore strewn about in the pool, and the corpses further from the explosion remained intact but were nonetheless killed by the shockwave. A talk with Joe Cobb reveals that he is a murderer.
Robbed some people. Burned some things, killed a few guys.
And this is likely true for many of his fellow Powder Gangers. Taking human life is a line he's already crossed, and would have no problem doing it again. He also seems to consider the town of Goodsprings to be part of Powder Ganger territory.
It is now. Me and the rest of the guys busted out of the NCR prison east of here and took over. Now we're calling the shots.
The cave lies between Goodsprings and the NCR-CF. So if the Powder Gangers consider Goodsprings to be part of their territory, then they must also consider the cave to be part of their territory also. So I do consider the Powder Gangers to be very strong suspects behind the murders in the cave. But there is one final option to also consider. Sonny tells us the NCR patrols help to keep the roads safe. Of course, this was before the prison riot and everything falling apart.
The new California Republic. Bunch of settlers and soldiers coming in from the west, fixing on making Nevada their own. They can be right pushy, but the roads are safer because of them, so I tend to let it go. Not that I got a choice. Well, the wildlife for one thing, rowdy locals for another. They're protecting their own. Just happens to help us.
Now the roads obviously are no longer safe, and there are far worse things than coyotes in the wasteland. We know for a fact that far more dangerous predators, such as Deathclaws, Night Stalkers, and even Yaogwai, like to make their home inside of caves, just like Goodsprings Cave. Right now, the cave is inhabited by coyotes and nothing else. But who is to say something else may have claimed this cave until fairly recently? There are currently no Yaogwai in the game, not counting Honest Hearts, of course, but that is not to say there couldn't have been Yaogwai in the very recent past. Perhaps NCR patrols cleared them out, but not before they killed the people we find inside of the cave. It is a possibility, as is the possibility of it being the work of a Deathclaw or rad scorpions, or a number of other creatures that would make more logical sense than to blame the coyotes. As for the coyotes, I do think they are innocent in this. I've read enough about coyote behavior in real life to know that they don't really do this, and there's zero proof that they did other than the circumstantial evidence of them being in the cave. But perhaps they didn't settle into the cave until sometime after the fact. Or maybe they lived in the cave all along, but maybe they just happened to be out of the office, or they were out collecting boulders at the exact time when all this went down. Who can really say for certain? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much covers the lore of Goodsprings Cave. One final thing I would like to mention is that I've tried to see if there really is a Goodsprings Cave in the real world, but I couldn't find anything mentioned on a map of that area. All I have to go by is what I can find on the internet, but being able to visit locations such as this in person would be a very different thing entirely. Maybe there is a cave there in real life, but maybe it's just not notable enough to receive any mention on the internet. One thing I do know from watching the Making of New Vegas documentary is that project director Josh Sawyer rode around in a motorcycle to research these places in person.
I wanted to sort of immerse myself more in especially the desert sort of style. I took a motorcycle trip through the desert, basically going all around the outskirts of Vegas. Traveling by motorcycle, you get a lot more opportunity to sort of see the area around you. This is just a different feeling from driving in a car, I think. And I just went all around there and I took pictures. I sort of paid attention to the type of flora that was really distinctive. Obviously you have Joshua trees and then certain types of cacti or wildflowers and things like that. It was basically just a nice inspiration for, you know, just the kind of feeling of being out there. I try to take a lot of opportunities to see what Vegas looked like from different positions. You know, what does it look like when you're coming up from I-15, or what does it look like when you're way up in the mountains west of the valley? It was a nice way to see the environment and get a feel for what it was like.
This, in contrast with the
All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
philosophy of Bethesda. I decided to make a lore video on Goodsprings Cave, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. I hope this video has been both entertaining and informative. If not, then I guess I'm just not cut out for this sort of thing. But you never really know until you try, you know?